So here we are in the summer storm. The story so far. The Union Army has gotten an early jump on things, pushing in towards and past Gettysburg actually, and continuing their recovery. Some of their units are a little exposed. First Corps feels like it's a little far out front and might actually be reachable and hittable, but it has mostly recovered. So the movement rates through recovery are a little higher, well, during the recovery process are a little higher than I think they should be. And I also cheated a little bit in a few different ways that may have, you know, caused these guys to be up at Gettysburg instead of maybe down here. That's about the limit of it. It would be, you know, about maybe a 4 or 5 hex difference at most, due to traffic jams or stuff that would have caused me issues through some of the cheating that I had. Stewie's shown up. Confederate units are beginning to pour onto the board, neglecting the fact that they can just win the game by collecting victory points. They probably have enough to win the game anyway, as it stands, so who cares about that. But perhaps the most interesting thing is that over here, we've got Buford's Cav positioned up on this ridge line here, and Heath moving into play here. Now, at the same time, you get some exercise in this game. Pender is making his way onto the tactical map, and in fact, I have to deploy him. Try to remember which hex that is. That is 2516, I believe. All right, maybe I'll peek back in after I do so. There's a little bit of silliness here. You're supposed to put it in the absolute center of the hex, which is what I did with Buford. I don't think that's what they actually mean. I think they mean midway through the hex on whatever road you're on. And that's here, trailing back. Part of me is off the map. Yeah, I've already removed him. I haven't removed the Confederate marker over here. And then there's also a question of, these guys are kind of going to be screening the units coming up the road behind them. Now, not thickly enough because there's other pathways. So I probably will start to detect Anderson when he comes over the mountain and whatnot. I haven't really worried too much about that because the only pathway was where Pender was and where Heath was. So yeah, but you know, it's a crowded entry. I want to get guys on the map. I want to get fighting started. Buford's not too happy. He's probably going to give up his defend order and fall back. This looks like too much for him to handle, but he can't give up too much ground because he's got to buy a little bit more time for First Corps up here to recover and to get its command in order and whatnot. It might well be showing up on the map very, very shortly, though. I'm going to wait until I recover. But Wadsworth is recovered. Maybe I'll put him on the map. Doubleday is back here under Rowley, so that wouldn't. But I may put Wadsworth on the map because he is recovered and should be able to interfere. So let me get him on as well. And so hex 2922 is this one. Again, not going in the middle. This isn't the road I'm on. I'm on this pike and then stretching back from there. And you can see kind of distance I've got on the tactical map. And yeah, they should be able to get in Pender's way. I may put Doubleday on there as well. Not sure which makes more sense for him where he should be, whether he should be up commanding, on the board or there. Either way, he can, exert his influence. Now that we have, units coming on the board and whatnot, things are a little different. I'm doing the Confederate roll here. Lee got himself 3 points. He spent 1 to give Hill a better roll. He spent 1 on PPP for Hill for tomorrow. I'm saving 1 for the initiative die roll. I think initiative is going to be important. We'll see how that ends up bidding up, because it could be that becomes where all the points end up getting spent each turn by the army commanders. But you kind of want your corps commanders to do stuff. Now, not worrying about anything else. Stuart got, got a roll up here. I haven't placed his unit yet. Might as well do that. I'm just going to move once, get him on the board. I'm not in any great hurry to get Stuart moving. Now, I may benefit him as a division commander, but he is also the Cav Corps commander. So now the Cav Corps is generating points as well. But getting over to Hill, who is in charge of those 2 units there on the board. The first one, Heath, I spent 2 command points to give him an attack order. That's going to actually give him some fatigue and stuff at the end if he uses it as an attack order, if it is still an attack order when it gets there. But I want to press some attack against Beaufort. Pender, over there, I'm buying an extra chit for. I'm just going to throw them in the cup. I don't want to, I could put direct command and that would give me more opportunities. But I have basically very few units that I'm going to be using commands for. The only 2 things in the cup are Pender. There's no reason. There's a little bit. Direct command allows me to engage, but I don't need to engage. I need to get my units on the board more quickly. Yes, I could put a double ops movement. That would be a little cheaper. But I want to get the rush on Wadsworth before he moves up too closely. So that's what they're doing. And that takes care of all the Confederate actions. You see how I'm kind of, beginning to utilize the way the system works now that I'm on the tactical map. That's going to keep growing. Let's get to the Union. With regard to the Union, and I don't know if I'm going to fiddle with this more, but earlier in the game, I had taken away, so Meade loses 2 points for Reynolds being his wing commander. I was also taking away 2 points off the die rolls for Reynolds. Now that there's Confederate units on the board, Reynolds is in that general vicinity of that, I'm giving him back those 2 points. I'm letting him roll at his +4, which is how the rules are written. I may just keep it that for the rest of the game. I just didn't want to be overly active with Reynolds because it looked easy to get on the board, and it has been easy to get on the board. It actually really doesn't matter too much about the command points that the Army or Wing Commander has. It's fine. Command situation for the Union is a little bit different. Which is that let's see. So first things, Beaufort got a couple of command points. I decided to just spend 1 to maintain my defense and put a chit in there. I'm keeping a couple of points for Reynolds for initiative more than anything else, because most of the units on the board can't really move. That can change. That can change because once who is this here? Who do I have there? Robinson. Once Robinson wakes up and whatnot, he can certainly move into play. He's currently still resting, so I probably don't want to bring him in very shortly. But I may want to bring in Doubleday's old division. I may want to start bringing Third Corps up into play. Third Corps is rested, I think. So there's no reason, not to at least start pushing them forward on the board and whatnot. Because those wagons only apply when you're on the operational map. Now, right now, they're on the operational map, so they're not doing anything this turn. Getting a little bit of a delay there. I'm also a little worried because, yeah, there's Confederate troops here. Do I want to position myself to the north of Gettysburg at all? Or do I want to just swing Third Corps into play to support First Corps? That's going to bring the weight of the Union Army up into that corner without a lot able to deal with this. Second Corps is still fatigued, and there's no one else really on the board fully yet. Yeah, I got like Howard's dancing around the edge of the board, but currently he's heading up this road, so kind of feel like I have to swing in from this direction. I think I'd rather have Howard move in this direction with 11th Corps and take up a position near 1st. But that's not going to happen today unless I start picking up fatigue for him. And he's already got some, I think, left. Yeah, he's still in rest mode. So that's kind of the thing is, where do I want to rush Third Corps? That is my additional reinforcement. Do I need to push them in this direction, or do I put them over near First Corps and get a little bit more weight towards holding off any Confederate advance up there? Getting to the First Corps, Doubleday actually rolled inactive. He had points left, so he spent one. And then for his own commands, all I did was spent one to give Wadsworth direct command. That means that I can move Wadsworth a little bit earlier than my other counters. I don't know if that's going to do me a hell of a lot, but I just feel like, look, I'm thinking about falling back, not this turn, but falling back eventually with Beaufort and maybe positioning myself in a defensive position up here instead of way up where I am, which means I can let Pender go. I don't want to fatigue my units. They've just, stopped being fatigued. Don't want to press them too hard, right? So that's where we're at with that. And we flip over, take a look at what's left. Ops move has been done. Stuart's been found. It's initiative time. Okay. So for initiative, the Confederates are going to bid 1, and I think the Union is going to bid 2 on that, using Reynolds. I don't think there's actually something that prevents me from mixing Reynolds and Meade's points here. Now, Meade didn't have the points, and he's also off board, so it feels kind of funny. That means there's going to be 2 extra points for... Oh, I forgot about the random events. 2 extra points for the... I haven't had a tie, so that's okay. 2 extra points for the Union. They lose the initiative. That means the Confederates are going to have the initiative for the 4 p.m. turn, which makes them very happy. They get the first action. We're not having any mass bombardment. Nobody's programmed any for any time, which means, yeah, we get to pick one of our units. We can either choose to move Heath's attack forward, or I know what's in the cup, I can start bringing Pender on the board. I think I'll do the latter because I feel like I'm in kind of a race with Wadsworth there. We're at an interesting situation. I remember the rule book, when you buy extra chits, you pay the divisional cost at that time. But here on the Corps Command expenditures, reactivation is more expensive than I thought. I thought it was just 1. Oops. Who fucked up and needed some? That would be First Corps. That's not good. Uh-oh. I have to throw Robinson in here. First Corps is here. And Doubleday is actually inactive right now. He didn't have 4 points available. So he's not doing anything. It doesn't mean his whole corps is inactive. It just means him as a leader is inactive. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying. Over here, additional divisional action chit. Here it says -1 DMF at end of impulse for the first one, -2 for the second, which is the same as the attack and defend ones have. I don't think that's right. First of all, no matter what, I'm going to pay the cost for these, but also I only know that I've got 2 of them as I'm buying them. I only know the extras as I'm buying them. It's going to be kind of painful to track getting those extras. This is where I think that like the differentiation that the rule book tends to make, that I was kind of complaining about, actually makes some sense. So here, Pender, he has 3. And I mark off 3 boxes. Now, you know, we're getting late in the day. There's going to be plenty of time to rest overnight. I don't really have to worry about it. But if it gets to shaking, once it does start getting to shaking, I think I'm going to start using the shaken markers and whatnot, not just for units, but to try to mark that a whole organization, like a division, is actually shaking. I need to replace this. It's, I don't know. Like this side has gotten hard because some of the cotton has kind of moved around. This side is not particularly, but neither one's very much fun to erase with. Yeah, here comes Pender. Remember, facing isn't a factor in this. Yes, I kind of face units towards each other. That just makes me happy in its own little weird way, but it isn't actually having any effect in the play. So I don't have to worry about like, oh, I can't remember his name. Buford. How can I forget Buford? I don't have to worry about Buford like moving in and, you know, flanking me as I march on the road or anything like that. You could argue that that's a little unreasonable. Yeah, but they are our turns and everything. It's just sort of a, I don't know. It's not an incredibly tactical game, even. You know, it's kind of funny. It's like CWB is at the same sort of brigade level units. Although actually, this has the brigades broken down into more counters, which is kind of interesting. You know, you can see some of that as like, oh look, you know, the line extensions and such not make up for the extra counters. Yeah, they kind of don't. The most the hex scale is exactly the same between this and Thunder, something people keep pointing out. Not just to me. I mean, people are pointing it out, like, you know, in comments on the game and whatnot, which makes this, if you like this map, an appealing option. But if the hex scale is the same, then I still have to try to find the difference between major and minor slopes. If the hex scale is the same, then a brigade should cover about the same space. Now in Thunder, the most space that a brigade can cover is 3 hexes. Some of the brigades in this, the big ones, are able to, they have like 4 counters, or I don't think anything has more than that, but I'm not positive. And those all have to be kind of close to each other. They actually don't even have to be within 1 of each other. I think it's within 2. So, you know, you can spread out even more. That's more of a let's pick it, and create some defensive line. But I would say in some ways that makes this a slightly smaller scale game, if anything, than CWB. But in terms of like the detail, in terms of two things, the length of time of a game turn and the amount of detail for maneuver and whatnot, and for fire for that matter too, you're not, calculating fire numbers and whatnot. You're got to be one hex away, except for artillery, and actually attack, and it's like just fire and melee all combined together. It does feel a little strange. I think in CWB, I think the effective firing range is 2 hexes. That ends up with some kind of weird situations where you've got units just sitting at a distance, plinking each other a lot. And I have to say, Terrible Swift Sword, LOB, all do the same thing. You have a lot less engagement than I think you should. Now, this isn't the Napoleonic battle, so yeah, sure, plinking, standing at a distance and trading shots did happen. Much, much more. So again, the game feels a little weird in that it doesn't allow for that at all. However, I feel like it was always too prevalent in, at least when I play, because you can find these optimal ranges, right? And just like degrade the enemy at a couple hexes. I think that was more in TSS than anything else. Even LOB kind of favored getting in there close, and CWB certainly. You couldn't really you couldn't expect to get much out of an attack if you weren't pressing it pretty hard. Okay, Rebs got another action. They pulled Pender again. Again, completely their choice because Pender is the only thing in the cup, and moved him up to a position up on here. And then facing Buford over here to kind of cut him off. Buford's looking like he's in a really unpleasant position. Got some artillery here stacked into here. I'm only using 1 unit per hex in general. They come in on road movement that way, and then there are, it seems to me like I don't really need to overstack, but like you're still allowed to like fight with 2 units per hex and whatnot. So I don't know. Generally, when you're playing operational games, it makes sense to have weight of units in place. I'm beginning to regret my continuing to defend, or my initial defend order, or anything that I'm doing here with Buford. He's afraid of getting wiped out. I did have to look up the rules on the interaction of how artillery work, how they stack, what they can do and whatever. I've got guns all the way up here. These aren't going to help much with all these woods in the way, but it's really hard to get them up on a hill. It's really hard. This is cliff. They're not going to be able to move across that. I've got to find a road to take them up. I feel pretty comfortable with the Confederate position right now, but yeah, we'll see. But the game is starting to get real at this point. We're actually, and the combat system and everything, I'm not familiar with it. So we're going to be struggling with those aspects as they happen. And I may end up kind of considering right now, take a little break. Maybe sitting outside with a beer. Because, yeah, when you start having to actually implement the reality of the game, of any game, right? When it's new and whatever, sort of I don't know, for me at least, there's a sort of a reluctance to move forward with it. Of course, Confederates, I can think about it this way, the Confederates probably don't want to move Heath quite yet. I might want to let Buford try to slit his own throat a little bit more. I don't want to be in contact with Buford when his action comes up, if he's in defend. I don't know that he is, though. That's the thing. That chart, that's not available to me. But I'm not really trying to press Buford. I'm trying to get on the map and get a reasonable amount of forces into place in a decent location. And all these ridge lines, I remember from TSS, not so much from Thunder, but I remember from TSS often doing the historical and fighting my way, across Hare Ridge and across McPherson's and to get to my position at Seminary, which doesn't ever seem to happen in Thunder. It's just like, oh, yeah, I want to get to, I just want to get to Cemetery Hill. That's the only thing that matters. It's not in TSS. There's a number of different places that give you victory points on the map. All the good terrain kind of is worth something. So it's like, well, I might as well defend these locations. Also, I think the terrain, and I think in this game as well, favors the defender doing the historical and holding those positions. I don't remember it feeling quite the same in Thunder. It felt like Thunder kind of like, I don't know. I don't know the reasons for why, but I do know that the Union very seldom threw its units all the way up to Hare Ridge or whatever and tried to defend. I just used Buford. I'll tell you one of the reasons. In TSS, the Union Cav is like killer because they're armed with like submachine guns or something. The carbines they have are just so powerful. They have like a 4 times multiplier to their fire combat capability and whatnot. They have a slight advantage in Thunder. They have no value in this except whatever the units have as their combat rating. The combat rating is not directly based on their capability, on the number of men in the unit. It's based on, troop quality, weapons quality, everything like that. It's all factored into a single number. Response over on the Union side and the Wadsworth managed to only get half movement. So he's not even closing the gap. Yeah, the Union's in a bit of trouble here. The Rebs are forcing the Union to keep picking rather than burning counters for them because I want to see what Heath does. If he's on defend, I don't want to close with him until, after he's forced to move or whatever. I don't know if that's reasonable. If he's not, well, let's see. I don't know what happens. I let him get away, which isn't the most terrible thing in the world. Again, I want to get on the map more than I want to win a fight down there. But what that means is that the Union's just getting chit pull after chit pull because they have nothing except that defend order, which has a chit pull in it. I really should, I don't know. Yeah, it's the same. So I was thinking, oh, look, on the R&R, they're in there, they're inverted or rotated or whatever so that they don't actually, so that I know that they've got a chit in the cup. But that's not really the case. They've got a chit in the cup if they're in the R&R, whether or not they're in that secondary state. One thing I could do is for a state where you can't use it, maybe rotate it 90 degrees, just to let me know you can't pick that chit. Attack and direct command you can pick. I think everything else is either in the cup or the march happens during the ops phase. But yeah. Kind of interesting. Somebody's, watching my old Stonewall video. Based on the TSS system, Mark Herman changed some of the rules for it for various reasons, but the guy's really engaged, and he's giving me some ideas about like why the combat chart was changed between it and TSS. I'm not sure I agree with his point, but he might be right on that. But also, discussing, strategy hints and stuff like that. And I mean, I stated my point on why I think the combat chart is why it is. He stated his point. There's not really much reason for debating, right? Mine has to do with, I think, Mark Herman could maybe chime in, but if he remembers why he did it all that time ago. But that's kind of the issue for me. It's like, I like to engage when people bring stuff up, but it's like, wow, I don't really feel like, debating something where I know I don't know the answer. And maybe he does. Maybe he's talked with Mark Herman and asked, why is this the case? Or maybe he's read something. For me, it's kind of like, yeah, look, the combat values that come out of Terrible Swift's Horde, they created too much casualties. And, in a way, there's sort of an alignment, which is that at Kernstown, there couldn't have been as many casualties. Like, you're playing the game wrong if you get that many casualties. But I don't really feel, I probably ought to respond to him, because I don't really feel like the system, by changing the system and making it less volatile, less violent for the combat, I don't feel like that prevents you from doing the kinds of things. I think that it would have been better, if what he's saying is right, to have made the victory conditions and aspects of the game in the specific rules such that you wouldn't want to do those things. You wouldn't want to engage in combat, and you kind of don't. But I actually think that it has to do with that TSS generated too high a casualty rate, and he just felt like GBACW was generating too high a casualty rate. But when you think about it, for little periods, it did generate the right combat rate. What it doesn't do is handle kind of the command and control issues properly in a way that prevents you from fighting too hard, too long. Man, we'll see. This game we're not going to be able to see because we don't get a casualty number, right? But the other thing is, where he's talking about strategy and stuff, it was more than 10 years ago. I did Stonewall in the first year, I'm sure. So that's like, what? Jesus, I don't know when I started. I don't know if it's 2009, 2011, something like that. But it's a long time ago. And yeah, it's because I bought the camera pretty much, my wife convinced me to buy it. And that's when I started doing the videos, is right after after the first time she visited and went back to Europe. But it is kind of weird because I really do like to engage with people. But man, I haven't played Stonewall. Like, I've played it since then, but I haven't played it like since very close to then. No, that's not true. I've played it since I moved to Eugene. I brought it down to the store and had somebody play it with me. Okay, but still, it's just funny to see somebody so engaged in something so long ago, and I get it. Okay, so the world changes a little bit because the Buford shit's been pulled. He falls back, not able to force any attacks or anything like that. Giving up some ground here. I need my way out, and I don't want to be standing there defending way up front here. Again, things look really bad for him. I don't want to get him wiped out, man. And then why things change is now the Confederates probably want to activate Heath, their last unit, so that they can start burning counters here. Well, burning counters is important. Why? Because if the Union has more stuff they want to do, I can reduce their movement. So these guys only moved half movement. They'd only get a 2 hex movement. if I burn that counter coming out of the cup. Again, I don't know what he's got in his thing, and I'm not sure how reasonable it is waiting for Heath, finding out he's on defend orders. Well, that's not great, right? But he probably doesn't have multiple chits in there. If he does, it's probably not a defend order, it's something else, and he'll pack up and leave. And then I want to get an action on him, so yeah. For the grand attack, unfortunately Heath rolled half movement. Now, I could have been wise. I could have said, hey, I wanna press my attack. I could have spent some of Hill. He's within command range. I forget about it because he's not on the map and I'm not used to doing things. But just to ensure that I got the full movement. The half movement means I couldn't really make it up the hill and get the hits up here that I wanted to. I've got to hit here, I've got to hit here. We're gonna see how these work. I'm gonna have to work my way through it kind of slowly. I'll explain what I did or am doing as I do so. One thing that I did though was, since it was an attack marker, Heath ends up with some boxes marked off. These guys here. That should happen at the end of the impulse, so like the units wouldn't become shaken at the beginning before they make their attacks. And I wish I had my chair over here. I could of course move another one, but things are kind of crowded back here. So let's try to move through this attack here. Davis has 2 units versus Gamble has 1. And we'll see how we do this. Withdrawal before combat, that's not going to happen here because he's in defend orders, he's in attack. The fight has to happen. I don't know where the combat tables are. There we go. And are there more over here? There's bombardment there. We're not doing that yet. Alright. I think I had to move too far for these guys to bombard. Plus, I kind of want the direct support. Alright, so calculate the base DRM. Engaged artillery give twice their strength because they're using canister. And shaken and broken units give different. So I've got 14 to 6. Okay. That's going to be a 1-to-1. Right? No, that's going to be 2-to-1. Yeah. So 2-to-1 gives me a base +2 to my attack. But there's modifiers coming in. First modifier is Defender's Terrain Multiplier, or modifier. We are going up a cliff. Wow, that can't be good. That's going to be a -4. So now we're at -2. This doesn't sound nice. I didn't have to attack, but once I moved close, I did. That's nasty terrain. Contributing fire. The unit being attacked is also in a ZOC of an unactivated or otherwise unengaged. No, any units that I would have brought up would have been part of Heath, so they would actually be engaged and would be throwing their strength in. So they don't just add a modifier. If it's under defend and the enemy is making the attack, yeah. Again, anything that's directly engaged would be part of Buford. It would have thrown its, it would be being forced to be attacked. Direct support fire. Engaged units with at least 1 unit in direct support get a plus or minus modifier. Now, what determines if you're in direct support? I think it's an unengaged unit next to you. I don't know where this is spelled. Yeah. So I think each of these has direct support behind them. Does it have to be the same brigade? I don't remember if that's the case. In both cases, that would be the case. Here we go. We've got kind of direct supports being defined here. Unit must be non-disrupted. Same parent division, doesn't have to be same brigade. Yeah, so those are going to cancel each other out. So I'm still at a -2 here. Enfilade surrounded, no. Difference in command ratings of involved officers, no officers involved. No cav charge. Each player gets 2 dice. I'm going to run out of battery. I should like turn it off while I'm walking around. So the Confederates are going to have a -2 to their die roll. The Union has a +2. I think the combat DRM, that's the 2, is what we use, but then we would add in active division modifiers, which we'll talk about in a moment. Like the attacker's going to get +3. Okay, so we've got a 14 for the Confederates and a 10 for the Union. Overall, the luck of the dice is helping. Okay, so I said 14, 15, 16, 17. So I get a total of 17 for the Confederates. And again, I'm gonna, it's not gonna be as hard to do this not on camera. 17, we were talking about a 10 here. +3 is 13. So it's 17 to 13. How many cohesion hits does that cause? The difference between the cohesion hits by the sides. Yeah, I'm not getting how many cohesion hits. Okay, here we go. Ground combat, 2 dice. 17 to 13 was the difference. So it's 2 cohesion hits per unit for the Union, 1 for the Confederates. And we'll be putting a 1-point marker under each of the Confederate units here. They have both taken hits, and a 2-point under the Union unit. Fingers work better. Okay. Now, the difference in cohesion hits is 1. The loser takes a morale check, and I have the choice of either retreating or taking the morale check with the zone of control penalty. I'm going to retreat. See, retreating forces him to go forward. I don't know if I really want him up there. I don't know what the significance of that. Oh no, and then I give up defensive terrain. Oh boy, I'm gonna be causing myself problems by having defended here. All right, we'll do our morale check. Unit's morale rating is a 6. Commander is adjacent. That gives me a +1, 7. The combat terrain, that was worth 4. That gives me a 11. Difference in cohesion hits puts me down to 10. I'm in an enemy zone of control. That puts me to 8. I get +1 because I'm under attack or defend orders. I think I'm at 9. And I have direct support that gives me a 10. Where's the morale check table? It's right here. So I need a 5 or better. I get that with an 11. So I'm unaffected morale-wise by this. But end up getting, you know, kind of beaten up by an unlucky die roll. But that's okay, right? Like, the odds were in my favor for defending up here. I will swap batteries very quickly and then do the next battle. One thing I didn't do is I've positioned a couple of artillery pieces, actually 3 of them, up here. I didn't throw any of them in here, so I'm going to throw them all in as contributing fire up here. So that's 1. He's flipped over now with the bar. So I'll give myself 4 extra points because it actually doesn't matter. Like, you might argue that I might be wasting artillery or whatever. I might end up getting a low ammo effect, which will be cohesion hits or whatever. But you might argue I'm wasting ammo or my opportunity fires or whatever if I had another attack order. That's not the case. That artillery is attached, so it would all just, even though some of it's core artillery, it's attached to that division right now. It would just end up getting to fire again, with, again, a possibility of low ammo happening. But I've just added another 4. I think I'm at 5 right now. The woods aren't going to do anything. All right, we'll look. So the basic combat DRM was 1.5 to 1 because I had 10 to 6. Defender's terrain. Woods has a bombardment effect but no ground combat effect. So I'm at +1. Contributing fire is what I just threw in. I threw 4 more in, so I'm at 5. Direct support, both sides have that, no issue. Enfilade, no. Difference in command rating, no. No cav charge. So it's at +5 for the Confederates. They're at 16, and -5 for the Union. They're at 10. 16 to 10, 19 to 13. 19 to 13 is a 6-point difference. See, this is what I keep looking up, and I think it may just be I cause 6 cohesion hits. That seems fucking ridiculous. No, it's here. Where is this on here? Ground combat's here too. Here it is. Okay. So, wait, what were we at? 16 to 13. So it's a 3-point difference in the hits, which means nothing. I think the last one was nothing as well. I think I fucked up. I was not a 7-point difference between the 2 dice. Oh no, 16 to 13. Never mind. I see what it is. So it's 2 cohesion to 1. So it's the same situation as I had before. Now, I don't know how artillery gets ammo depletions. I think it happens when I roll doubles, and I didn't see a doubles here. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. Whenever you fire artillery, ammo depletion. If any dice during a counter battery or ground combat, we did a ground combat, results in a natural tie. Yeah. I don't know what a natural tie means. I think they mean doubles on the attack roll. On the 2 dice that you make for an attack. Because like bombardment, I don't think you roll against each other. Otherwise, it might be a natural tie between these two, which is, of course, what's the likelihood? Like, this has a 10% chance of happening. Rolling doubles on 2 dice. It's a lot harder to figure out what the chance of it requires actually calculating the probabilities to some extent. It's not just obvious, right? The chance of 2 dice, 2 sets of 2 dice being the same values. I think it's probably 10% as well, but I'm not positive. Either way, it did not happen in either case, so I'm not going to worry about it, but I'll think about that, which way they mean a tie. And that means the Union has to make another morale check. And in this case, the unit has a morale of 6. 7 for the adjacent commander. There was no terrain bonus. 8 for sea hits. I actually don't mind giving up this space, but I don't want to give up the flanking. So 8 for that. Drop it to 6. Bring it up to 7 for being in attack order. Bring it to 8 for direct support. Direct support. No. 7. And I get a 15, which allows me to hold my position without any being degraded. Now, the effects of each of these combats, this is where it starts getting more complicated. You have to look in the division morale table to see if anything happened that would have done anything. So, you know, I'm not used to this, but in this case, cohesion hits don't do anything to divisional integrity themselves. These other factors do, though. Now, I thought you get hit. I thought just being attacked ends up causing you to get one, but it doesn't appear to be. And this is going to be so like here, being forced to vacate, retreat, or eliminate defensible terrain in ground combat is going to cause a penalty for me. But that's going to happen just for withdrawing. So the army is going to take hits. Now those hits can be recovered by putting units in reserve status. But that's kind of the victory point track is the top portion of this chart here. And yeah, and the Confederates have a shit ton of points. You know what would kind of make sense? I don't know if it's enough, but if like Confederate losses came off their victory points first or something, I don't know. Like something unrecoverable, like the thing is that any losses the Confederates take on their track here, they can recover. The victory points that they gained for just like squatting, those can't be touched in any sense of the word. The only thing you can hope to do is is completely demoralize the Confederate army, and then yeah, maybe they leave, you know, the goodies behind that they captured. So that's what's different in this turn. We've done everything that's going to be new and exciting to us, which is the actions that happened over here. Did we do them well? No. But it's going to take a while to get used to the system. It is cumbersome in every way to me right now. Will it get easier? I don't know. Remembering lots of numbers, like after I roll the dice, I have to remember the 2 numbers. That's not trivial. That's a painful thing. Might involve using paper to scratch down what the differentials are, you know, what the numbers are, so I can find the differentials when I need to or whatever. But we're going to move on with the turn. Out of where combat started, we can take a quick look. We got Stuart beginning to make it onto the map. His goal is to get himself over so he can put his wagon somewhere, if I recall correctly. Oh. You think there's a reason. Captured supply wagons. Yeah, if I'm okay, so that wagon is just worth 20 victory points. And it's not distinguished from the other wagons or anything like that, so it's kind of annoying. It's like, I just have to keep it somewhere. I have to keep from losing it over the course of the game. Now, you could say, hey, it's trailing here. It's part of this formation is what it is. So I think they all stack together if they get that. A little bit of shifting around. Moving through the South Mountains here. And then from the Union point of view, well, we got the reflection. There's Stuart there. There's some unit there. Here's the cav coming down here. It's visible right now because it's not behind any lines of anything that I can talk about. But Pickett hasn't moved and isn't allowed to move until that cav gets too close to him to protect the wagons there. I think we are going to deploy some forces on the map. I think the Union wants to deploy. So the Union's almost completely recovered at this point. I see, with him inactive, I don't think I can put him on the map reasonably. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I can always shift him closer and whatever. Well, actually, I can't because he's in R&R. So, like, it would make sense to put him on the map, but I don't feel like I should be allowed to do that with him inactive. But I can put the 3rd Division and I can put 3rd Corps on the map. And both of those will allow me to move those units to help reinforce this sector. So I'll do that. This is what those deployments look like. What do I got here? So this is Rowley with Doubleday's division working its way up fine. You know, not taking up a lot of space. But then 3rd Corps is swinging down here and here. And because the representation doesn't quite work, like the number of counters to the hex halves, whatever, they tried and it comes pretty close. But also because I didn't want to deal with, you know, units on the operational map with units in front of them in view on the tactical map. I also put the artillery in place. I think I have to put this on the board because it's not clear where it's cluttering things up, right? So I think this 2nd Division of Doubleday has to go on the board. I'm going to keep it in R&R, whereas these other units are going to probably pay to leave R&R. In fact, shit. I had to have a point. I had to have a point to pull Wadsworth out because he started moving. And that little clump just looks like this, which isn't too bad at all, but I want to make sure because, look, you know, I want to take this roadway up. Yeah, I got something in my way, so I probably want to go this way, right? Which I would have done over on the operational map, but if he's invisible, I can't. Now, the only other thing that I feel like maybe should be on the board is Stuart, but I kind of know he's going to be kicking away and around Gettysburg. But I got to be real careful because there are Union forces on here. I'm aware of those forces, and maybe the only reasonable thing to do is to put them there. Now, my goal with Stuart is, like, really what I want to do is I want to go through Gettysburg and run up that road. You know, that's what it looks like it should be. But I look over here, and it's also not clear that I can't do that. The only place where it's clear that I can't do that is over here on the tactical map. I kind of feel like I gotta use the tactical map. It's kind of funny because I think I'm able to actually move faster on the operational axis than I am on the tactical, which is a strong reason not to do it. But if I'm going to be anywhere near him, now if instead I cut up here and try to make my way, but there's no big roads going through. The big roads are all Gettysburg. Maybe I'll just keep Stuart over on that side of the map. As I try to focus on getting control of the roads. And you know what? The importance of Cemetery Hill starts to shine here. We start looking at, what other paths do we have to combine these forces, right? And we have this Fairfield Road. Oh no, my maps are coming apart. This always happens to me. It's not too bad. We have this Fairfield Road. Well, that leads back there, but where does that get me? That gets me to some horrible stuff. Like, Fairfield doesn't really get me out. So trying to focus on that doesn't look too good. Emmitsburg's the big road. That's what I want. Yeah, sure, there's small roads around here, but this game really makes the Emmitsburg Pike so obvious and so clear that, you got it. You got whatever the hell this is. That's almost as big. And then you got things going in the wrong direction. The only real options I have is to move the army to one side or the other, either to Greencastle here or Hanover over here, if I want to get support. And immediately, gonna fight on this map? Yeah, Cemetery Hill is important. I don't care what you say. If you're gonna be on this map, you can't convince me that keeping those pathways, those roads, is unimportant. Now look, there are other ways the Confederates could do it. They could smash down to the south and try to do, the move towards Pipe Creek or whatever. But that gets you over on the operational map. But I feel like any kind of reasonable thinking leads you to say, you know what, you need to control the Emmitsburg Road. Or something else. But there aren't a lot of something else's. The something else is here, and that doesn't help. It all focuses, and the big defensive spot is Cemetery Hill, and it all goes through there. We got another road back here that is, again, goes right over Cemetery Hill. There's no way around it. If you want to maintain a north-south connection on this map, you need to control Cemetery, as far as I'm concerned. And a game that says, okay, look, the reason these combatants are here in both cases is in order to, destroy the enemy army. Yeah, that's true. But one way to destroy the enemy army is to get it cut off from supply. And if the Confederates are forced to operate without supply lines for too long, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They need those lines of communication going back. If you're going to fight on this map, that means controlling one of these roads. And essentially, if you want to be north of Gettysburg to any degree, it means Cemetery. If you're going to include these other areas, sure. Again, there are different ways that you could have done this game. But I don't understand, even the victory conditions for the tactical game don't really make sense, right? They don't put any onus of the attack burden on anyone because the terrain is not given any value. Well, the terrain needs to be given value. You don't have to say Cemetery Hill's worth something. What you have to do is say the connection is worth something. And, neither of these armies is going to operate without a connection back to their lines of supply. Maybe they will for a couple of days, but they can't hold their position if they're cut off. They're going to have to do something to get the hell out of the area and find their way someplace where they can draw a line of supply. So if there's any reason to fight on this map, this has to be worth something. One way or another. There's different ways you can write the rules to make it worth something. But yeah, it purely controls the whole situation on the map. And it just becomes so obvious. And then it's like, well, then why the fuck wouldn't you, for your tactical game, write that in as victory conditions? And for the operational game, yeah, you want to open up this whole map and make it worthwhile, you got to do more than give me Gettysburg, right? You got to give me some of the other road hubs, to give me choices, to give me a reason to fight your Devil May Pay or whatever up here, which is, it can't be joined in. It's not part of this campaign. It's its own little stupid campaign using the same system and the same units. It's not what I want. What I wanted was something that gives me that operational view. I wouldn't have even touched it if all I thought it was going to come down to was a tactical fight over Gettysburg. And that's what it is. Except for it's one without victory conditions that make sense. If you play the straight tactical game, the victory conditions don't make sense because they're just wipe out the enemy. Yeah, okay. It's not enough. It's not good enough. You need more. Monday night here. Got a clan versus clan thing about, going to start in a few hours. So I'm going to have to take a nap or whatever. But I figure I can slip something in here. I have, a couple of things. One is I had a couple of beers and a cigar a while back. And kind of, enjoyed being outside even if I didn't get anything done. But beyond that, while I was doing so, I finished reading Last Chance for Victory's designer notes again. And Dean had some really interesting things to say. He got involved in the, hey, are my ratings reasonable for the game, for Longstreet, for Lee, for really all the commanders on the Confederate side. He made arguments about each of them, going into a lot of detail because I think he knew he was going to get some flack for lower ratings for them. Just like this game has the potential for lower ratings. I don't want to deal with additional die rolling though, which is what's involved, instead of, I don't know, to make them more spotty throughout. On the other hand, he also had something that I feel was really cool, which is he went into the research that he and others did to figure out the artillery ammo situation, and highlighted some really interesting things that, like, yeah, the Union had tons of ammo, but it wasn't at the battlefield, and it was a pain in the ass to get. They basically parked it, I think actually, it might be at Westminster, but they parked it in Maryland somewhere. I'm not seeing any state lines, so I don't know. And yeah, a lot. They actually ran into serious difficulties in getting enough ammo together because a couple of the corps left their ammo trains behind, and that's not represented here. All the divisions have their own little ammo train and such not. And then he also went into, obviously, the Confederates' difficulties, which were also greater than is often represented in most games. And in most games, the Confederates have enough ammo to probably last the game, and the Union have way more ammo than they need. I'm thinking about TSS here, but in most of them. And what he was able to calculate out and claims is that essentially after the third day the Confederates were out. They had enough ammo like to cover a withdrawal, and that's it. And that they really could not have stayed another day. Much as many games have a, well, what about a fourth day, you know? The thing he goes into is how incredible the second day was for the Confederates and just how much it highlights how good the Army of Northern Virginia was. Not the leadership particularly, but just that like these units could withstand the amount of punishment they had on the assaults on that second day. And, you know, I've seen a lot of games where that second day it ends up a close run thing. And kind of his argument is more like, wow, that should actually be kind of an outlier that they do anything close to what they managed. So command phase generated a few issues. Let's take a look. Get initiative. I'll roll that before I'm done. But for the Confederates, I don't think anything too exciting happened. More or less what I'm expecting. I spent some points to get Heath back in attack, or keep him in attack. Pender, I'm not worrying about. I'm not spending anything extra on him. He's covering, you know, the area I want there. For the Union, though, they've put a bunch of units on the map, right? Well, Sickles is ordering both his divisions. I hope I'm in range. Let's see what the command range. Corps is only 12 movement points here. These are like a half each or less. Yep. Wait, he can use road movement though, because he's a leader alone. Right. It says only march orders, but I think, yeah. Yeah, so I actually can't do something that I just did here. So these guys I threw in the march orders. They should actually be here. Well, which one? I may be mistaken which one. Okay, I'm being stupid here. No big shock. The first is over here, and the first will be in the cup. And I get a point back with Sickles. Sickles ordered the one unit he's got on command. The command ranges have gotten smaller on this map, which is why I'm kind of confused, because like I've got Reynolds who's trying to use his command on the ops map, but honestly, like, he's reaching things on the tactical map, and I don't know what the hell to do about it. I'm going to transfer him shortly, but I think it wasn't a problem. He could only really reach this out of the things that are on the map. Sickles ordered his one division here to go into march orders. To do that, he had to spend a point to get them out of R&R. These guys are not out of R&R, which actually means the artillery is not going anywhere. They're just gonna, this whole column's gonna park there. Sickles will probably try to get within range of his other column and give it orders. But the big problem is Doubleday, who is sitting over here, inactive. Now he's allowed to move a little bit, but he can't give orders. And that's a big deal because Wadsworth is approaching and is unable to do a hell of a lot of anything. I'm going to try to take a position up on this ridge line here, I guess, as best I can. And it also means I can't do anything with whoever the hell this is. Robinson. I can't do a damn thing about him. He might just get lucky and wake up. But I can't give him points to, no matter what, to get him out of his R&R state. And similarly, I don't have points to get this out of R&R. So even though I put these guys on the board, I don't have a command. Now, does Reynolds have an ability? I could spend on a subordinate's activity, but I can't. See, what I can't do with a, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I could activate someone with the Army Commander, but what I can't do is I can't spend to immediately generate an order. I can't bypass the chain of command with Reynolds. So he can go up and talk to Doubleday and say, hey, what are you doing with my core, dude? And it's really ridiculous because this is Reynolds' core. Like if he issued an order, I bet you it would be followed. But anyway, not gonna bypass it here. But yeah, he's got to go do something, talk to Doubleday, and then Doubleday has to get into range where he can issue orders to guys like this. So some of these units that I put on the map, they're not doing shit, and I probably shouldn't have put them on the map because that does not free them from the fact that they're in rest and recovery. For initiative, I've got points for Reynolds. I don't want to spend them because I think I need to move him, and I may need both things to move him. Lee has used up his points, and I find the gray dice. So the Union's going to have the initiative this time. And we're at the 5 turn? Are we? I don't know. I've lost track of time now. I think we're at the 4 p.m. turn. I'm not positive about that. I could look here. This will tell me because I put the last turn 1 more point in here. So what we should be seeing is up to 90 going here. 15, 30, 60, 90, yeah. And then I've got the 103, 105, 106. Yeah, we are at the 4 p.m. turn. Okay. And I will do whatever the hell it is I'm supposed to do next, which is going to be the actual action impulse control. The Union's going to get a free move. What are they going to do? Oh, I didn't tell you about Buford. So Buford actually, he gets to roll his own core command points at a penalty. But he got enough that he was able to issue himself 2 direct commands. And now since I got initiative, I'm going to be able to get the hell out of Dodge quicker than Heath can move. So I can try to get out of there. I don't feel up for coping with that right now. It's starting to get really hot. Like, it's not bad yet, but it's feeling like summer, and it's supposed to, like, we're getting heat warnings. It's supposed to be like hitting into the 90s or whatever. This happens here. Sometimes it gets over 100, and usually a couple days a year. And so I don't know, but I'm also just not feeling terribly well. Some of the self-abuse I indulge in. I feel a little better, quite a bit better, honestly. I had a sandwich and just fucked around a little in more raid productive ways. I played a couple of Hydra battles I got to get out this week. and it's going to be kind of a time pressure over the CBC, over the clan fight. But what's kind of interesting is I did something, I almost never do anything like this. I run 2 cups of tea at all times, basically. Whatever cup I'm drinking, if I don't have another one brewed already, pot goes on and I brew it. Well, unfortunately, I brought up the one that I had just brewed instead of the one that I had, which wouldn't be that big a deal. I just have to run downstairs and switch. Except that I had put the tea bag, which, hadn't been in there long enough, in my recycling container. So my green tea that I made in that cup might end up with a little bit of coffee and whatnot in it. All right, let's get started, I guess. Who won initiative? The Union did. Well, they will almost certainly take it with Buford, which I bought 2 chits for Buford, and I have to mark him for his action. Let me make sure I marked Heath. If I forgot Buford there. Yeah, it looks like I owe Heath another 4 fatigue as well. Okay, so Buford pulled back where he could. He only had half movement, and you got to pay for zones of influence. I think you have to pay for zones of control too. It's not on the chart, which is weird, but and that actually means I just gave up a 4-point defensive line, from how I understand it. Which means we start marking the army morale off. Now the different numbers, the little breaks, they don't mean a damn thing, except that those are victory points. Which, again, I don't really know how to assess them, but I feel at least the army points I can treat as one thing that makes sense. Confederates got the next action. And I have to try to think this through, whether it makes any sense, because my initial impulse is, let's make the Union go. The reason being, well, Buford's gone already. I don't have to worry about him. I can drain counters. Wadsworth there, yeah, I'd like to see him deploy. I'm not charging up to hit him particularly, not yet. I'm looking at Buford, but there's the question of, hey, oh, by the way, I pulled another set of dice out so I can reduce some of my walking at least. I might go down all the way downstairs and get another pair of tweezers or something. I got one more that I don't use on my pipe. But I'm actually not sure. First of all, I know that Buford has another thing, so I should make a die roll for it anyhow. If I'm considering doing anything in advantage of that, especially since my gut reaction was just let them go. But there's absolutely no harm to me pursuing Buford. The only thing that I get harm with is draining the Union Cup. Why would I want to drain the Union Cup? I can't think of a good reason for that, to tell you the truth. And this is kind of the problem. So I think on a 1 or a 2, I'll let the Union go, because I can't think of a good reason. Like I want to drain my cup to deprive them of possible actions now that they're on the board and everything. Okay, so I will take my attack action. This is when I pay, which is why I hadn't marked Heath yet. Complicated things to remember here. So I got a shitty roll with Heath, which made me curse. Why didn't I spend a hill point? He doesn't have a lot, but to give him an extra point, an extra 2 points on his die roll, which would make it really unlikely that he'd fail. I actually got low enough that, not this, I had like a 4. He has 2 points for his command. That brings him to 6. That would throw him inactive. But he's this is what I have to remember. He's under attack orders, which means the worst he can possibly get is the half movement allowance. Which kind of makes sense because my initial thought was, if he's under attack orders, actually I'm not sure about that. That might be if you're in a zone. And I am not in a zone. I'm going to have to look it up now. Yeah. But I am kind of wondering what would happen. Like, the half movement allowance and the 2 hexes is not that different. It really isn't. Even though, and it wasn't that different over here, but I dropped it to 1 hex over there because I'm like, yeah, come on, you're not moving 2 hexes anymore each turn. You're moving like 8, 10 hexes. It's worse than I thought. I think there's something else that states things differently. Upon winning an action impulse, a player can activate an attack division. Divisions under attack orders may move. They get 1 level of activity higher than rolled for by the commander up to a maximum of extra. So I actually moved Heath a little too little last time. Which means I get my half movement this time. Should I give him full movement? Nah. We're not going to try to even things out. For an example of rough terrain, because I'm worried that maybe these little dots here, I know this is the slope. There's just too much terrain in this game. And I would think there's some near Culps. I'm not really, yeah, maybe it's this. A few little rocks there. That looks a little bit more determined. But man, especially as you start getting to the middle of the board and everything, I may have to use the camera to zoom in and try to check terrains of things, just because, yeah, you know, most of the big games I have, things are pretty clear on them. Thinking like the OCS, although I haven't had to reach too far on that, that was 2 maps deep for DAC at most. Was it 2 or 1? I feel like it was 2 maps deep. Nice, really clear laid out. I played Le Retour de l'Empereur. Le Battle de Leipzig, which was huge, pretty visible. The 7 days stuff, huge mappage. This is not that big, but it is, I don't know what to call it. Like maybe about 3 maps, about the same size as TSS, just because these are smaller maps. TSS has a very nice visible map. I'm thinking, you know, even things where, you know, like Whiff or, well, Whiff is annoying, at least with the newer editions. But, you know, where there's maybe 4 maps, but they're kind of separated, so you're not in this position where you have to go into the middle. This is about as hard as what I had to go into. No. That was 9 maps. Wasn't it 10 maps? 10 maps. But yeah, I mean, it was like 2 at a time, you know? So it was about the same distance to get to the middle of the mappage. The only thing that was really, really hellish for me that I've played so far is the 7 days thing, which was 9 maps and, you know, in a rectangle and, you know, a 3x3 rectangle. So, in the middle of that was pretty hard to hit. My eyes were better then, though. Okay, what am I doing? I'm still in the midst of movement. There's a fair amount of counting and everything. Even though this has a fairly simple system for the movement in combat and whatnot, it's got enough differences and everything that it's kind of a pain to get used to all the mechanisms. And the resulting situation is pushing forward here. However, I got pushed back here. And so kind of a mixed result. This was a lot of odds. The problem was some of my units were going up a cliff. Now, we got away with that before, but here we got hit with a hit and didn't do anything to the enemy. And yeah, the units going up the cliff actually have a defensive modifier for being at the bottom of the cliff. There's a +3 defense to that, I think. Oh wait, no. No, there's a -2. But I rolled tremendous on these guys. So, yeah. There's a +2 attack for going down the cliff. I don't know how much sense that makes. I don't know if you've ever tried, like, going down a cliff to attack someone. I mean, cliff seems pretty extreme, right? Sure, you're right. All right. I guess not for melee. If you're standing right above them, shooting them, that's pretty impressive. But yeah. Or throwing things down at them. All right, well, that got the first 2 units done, and it has been quite significant in terms of the amount of effort and time taken. I probably am not going to finish the turn before I have to go raid, but right now I have to swap batteries. I'll see if I can play a little bit more. I mentioned it before, these, find the odds, and that gives you a DRM, and then go through this whole list of many DRMs, type of combat systems. Druid had one like this. I played that at one point. I find them very cumbersome and painful. I basically have to go through the list every time. Whereas with a normal CRT, usually there's just a couple of modifiers. You look up the terrain modifier, the leadership modifier. Everything else is kind of baked into there. This has a lot of little finicky stuff, and the movement involved in generating that finicky stuff is a pain in the ass. So yeah, it does add up to something kind of ouchy. It's kind of late, but like I should be playing raid right now. But since I was up here, I rolled. Union got another action. Buford's going. I rolled his activity. He's going to get full movement this time. But while I was wandering around, I think I found an example of the difference between a major slope. So a major slope looks like it has little lines on it. Minor slope, I think, does not. So then the question comes, where can I find something without little lines? I think there's no little lines there. Okay, this is cliff though. I come over here, and I see little lines along there. So no little lines here. No little lines here. It basically requires me to use the camera to zoom in to be able to see it. Now, again, my eyes. I'm an old person now. But, yeah. So I think minor slopes, I'm going to very much assume that what I see is not a minor slope unless it convinces me very well. That might be minor. But these, I think, have lines on them. I don't know. That's the only difference. Like here it looks very different, but it's not like that when you start adding color and everything to the world. I'm misinterpreting the cost of army morale to falling back. I think it's per hex. Like per defensive hex. So for example here, I feel like I withdrew voluntarily from 2 hexes. Both of which, one had cliff, one had major slope. So let's look at those. And everything else is fine. I wasn't in contact, so it didn't hurt. Since I voluntarily went, it reduces the cost. And since I did it under movement and wasn't under defense. So we had a major slope, which would have given me a 2 and a cliff. So that would be 1 and 3. So that's 4. So I paid the right amount for the 2 together. But now I have given up, I think, another major slope. So I have to pay another one for that. I'm not going to charge myself for the stuff that wasn't, that I wasn't in contact when I gave it up. See, the way they say it, defensive terrain is defined as any hex that gives a ground combat modifier. If you vacate under. However, if the defend unit voluntarily withdraws, I think the idea of withdrawing means that you have to be abandoning it under some level of pressure. And given that if you do it voluntarily, you get a bonus off of it, I'm going to say that you're being attacked. Now, here, this is a little weird because, well, I drove him out of there, actually, but I was being attacked. Some of the units were attacking in clear terrain across at me. Some of them were attacking up the hill, but I'm giving up the hill. So I'm going to charge myself the extra 1 for that. I think that's it for now. I've taken care of almost everything over in this area. Sure, I still have Pender and Wadsworth, but they're just going to be maneuvering as far as I'm concerned. I've taken care of the major combat section. I also have a shaken unit. Heath had a unit shaken. Does that do anything? I don't think so. I made the leader loss checks. Over here, yeah, divisions going broken or shaken cost you. You get part of it back. I'm looking to see if you get part of something back for gaining terrain. I don't think so. There's no positive morale for success, which, I mean, I can see arguments in different directions, but there's two different things being tracked here. And we're talking about the army morale, which is, hey, I'm losing ground, I would lose things. If I was gaining a lot, I would think that that would be a positive of some sort. Probably not as much as the negative for losing ground would be, in case people are switching back and forth. That just ends up wearing both armies down. The only way you gain army morale is by putting units in reserve, which again, doesn't really feel like, it just doesn't feel like it would improve army morale particularly. It's like, you be ready. Yes, sir, I feel wanted. You know, I mean, that's about the extent of how it's improving morale that I can see. But yeah, the idea of like the battlefield situation improving, I could see that raising your morale. But you see that in the old the Napoleon's Art of War by SPI, the Dresden game, I think has that. I don't think Heilao does. And the idea of like successes generate positive, results and help your army keep pressing on. Of course, you don't really lose morale just at random either. So I guess if you lost a major area and gained another area, I don't know if that would balance out your morale to any degree. But again, I think the morale should go down quicker than it goes back up, just like, from other things. What it's not is fatigue, which is kind of why I'm like, well, yeah, that wouldn't improve just by doing better particularly. Fatigue is handled by these, along with stragglers and all kind of other stuff, so I don't know. Yeah, and they're also handled by cohesion hits, which we've got a fair amount of over here. Anyway, I'm off. It is Tuesday. I should have, as usual, arranged to go shopping either yesterday or today. The heat's going to start increasing. Of course, I could slip in early in the morning, because it doesn't really get warm here until noon. So, you have to get up pretty early in the morning to get up in the morning, as far as I'm concerned. But that's difficult for me to do. For example, today I woke up at 3:30. All right, let's continue with this turn. The thing I forgot about think it's so easy for things to slip with so many different order types, with so many different rules around them, is that under R&R, I can still move. It's just half movement. So the first division of Sickles is pushing forward. And you can see they're making quite a bit of ground. They're up to Cemetery Hill now. The reason for that is that we've got hour-long turns, it's road movement and everything. So even the half movement doesn't really hurt, as long as I don't get unlucky with the die rolls. The Confederates are a little unhappy. They're forcing Union units to go in the hopes of maybe making Wadsworth get his pull and move. I don't have a lot of actions, so I could eat up a fair number of possible repositionings and everything. I think the Confederates feel at this point both letting Buford get away and letting Sickles start moving. If they're going to win initiatives, they're going to take them from now on, and it's not worth letting the enemy move. And because very soon I will start being able to step on them, and something like Sickles' movement here would have only been 2 hexes. I'm confused. It looks like I had already made my attack with Heath because he's got a shaken unit there. I'm sure he didn't have that at the beginning of the turn. So, did he? I was able to hit a couple of hexes. Was that before or after the withdrawal? I may have just ignored the recovery rules. Let me try to find them and see what's going up there. Because I just got his activation. I'm like, oh, I want to do him. Yeah, he's pretty, I managed to get a couple of attacks in, didn't I? I don't know. I'm lost. Problem was, he was still in the attack box here. So I shifted him there. I'm going to play it as though it's the situation that stands. I may have, misdone something. Shit happens. It looks to me like he's paid for 2 attacks. I'm pretty sure he didn't buy 2 attacks at any given turn. Yeah, these have to be last turn, because Buford withdrew before, I keep thinking this, yeah. Okay, so how do I get my morale back is the question. When do I get it back? That would maybe be in the adjust morale segment? That would make sense. But that's like, I don't know what. It says morale, but there's like 3 different types of morale, right? All shaken markers are moved, all broken or flipped to their shaken side. Flip artillery done, committed. Divisions under reserve get their points back. Nothing about army morale there. Does it? Yeah. Divisional morale goes up, army morale goes up. Yeah. Okay. So this should have come off without a morale check already. And now I take the attack underway. Now I started the turn with an attack. God damn it. Alright, well, I'm going to press further again. I know this is causing issues for Buford. We're being overly friendly to the Confederate advance here. But you know what? The Union made it too far on the map, damn it. And it would have been possible for Heath to do this. It would have cost another... I paid the 4 fatigue for the attack, but it would have cost another command point, another 3 command points from Hill that he doesn't have. But let's make him more aggressive, because I can't go back. I've launched this attack, and now I realize what happened after I paid the... After I looked at the thing, I started this turn fired off the attacks, did the movements away. Now I'm giving it another attack, and it's just because another chit stayed in there. It's me not being comfortable with the command system and the combination chit pull. Like with a normal chit pull, you got to pull a chit to have something happen. Here, you've got counters, some of which remain on the chart, some of which don't. There's a lot of room for making this kind of error. Anyway, screw it. We'll press harder. I'm reversing my decision. I'm going to try to pull back and get back into position. This is not fair. First of all, the shaken marker came off. Much the reversal, the decision to move, and then the reversal of that decision. I'm sure I ended up not where I was. In fact, I'm absolutely positive. I'm kind of close, not too much though. Anyway, I'm finding it very, very difficult to distinguish the counters in a way that's necessary to play the game, which is to say, look, I can keep my division together so far. That may get harder as more and more counters start accumulating on the board. But the divisions are not color-coded in any way. You basically have to look for this little thing. So I can see where even that would become a problem. The core are color-coded. I can definitely keep core together. Core are pretty big units in this game though, so the idea of mixing up a core is going to be kind of unlikely. The only place where that's going to get in difficulty is when I get like the Union Artillery Reserve getting mixed in with units. That's going to look kind of funny, but you got to do something. But when it comes down to the individual units, that's of importance too, because unlike TSS and CWB, which give you, hey, I'm going to give you a given brigade or regiment in the case of TSS, and it's together. You know, it's just there. Now in TSS, you can't cover extra ground with that regiment. In CWB, you can cover up to 3 hexes of ground with a given brigade. Same scale as this. In this, you can cover quite a bit more. You can spread units out. But what you can't do in general, and this is where it really gets fuzzy, in general, is stack your units from different brigades. But you kinda sorta can. It's just gotta be in a case where like there's an odd unit out, like a four counter brigade can stack its unit with another brigade's units. And it's kind of fuzzy to begin with. It's like, I'm doing my best to try to keep these together, but man, it's not trivial. It's not trivial. We're gonna get some mix up there. How big a deal is that? I don't think it's that huge a deal, to tell you the truth. Maybe no worse than what we just did here. All right. Back to rolling dice and basically doing nothing. We got the meat of the turn out of the way. That's the thing I remember saying, is I got the meat of the turn out of the way. The only exception being the question between these two. Now, maybe I said that last turn and got confused, but I think I ran through last turn entirely. I mean, obviously I made through the turn, but I just don't fucking know. I don't care at this point. I erased the extra the extra fatigue hits on Heath. I just thought that I had let Buford get away, but I think I smacked him before he got away. All right, the cups are empty. My battery is almost drained. I think it's about time for me to play Raid. I'm gonna hold off before I go into the operational movement. Some minor things to keep in mind though. You know, even an inactive Robinson under R&R rules can still move 2 hexes. I don't know if that should be halved. I don't know. But because he's now on the map, his little supply wagon thing no longer takes place. I guess the biggest thing we've got is that Wadsworth has started deploying on this ridge. I don't have enough to stop Pender, as far as I'm concerned. And between Pender and Heath, it's going to be really, really tough. The Cavs got to cover some of that Whistler's Ridge or whatever. But the thing is, I've got to throw something in the way. This is the same problem that faced the Union Cav historically, except they didn't have Wadsworth up there. They didn't have First Corps up there early as I'm getting them. And they managed to do a fair delaying job. It's kind of funny, and Dean Essig went into this in Last Chance for Victory, how, he puts it as previous games have made it so that, like, those carbines just are like, just decimating. Basically what happens is the Cav's pretty weak and it can't hold. Like, numerically it's just going to fall eventually to melees and whatnot. To constant pressure. And it's just going to get ripped to shreds. But at the same time it's ripping to shreds the Confederate units. And he puts down the actual casualties that happened from the engagement. And he's like, it worked out to be about 2 factors worth of damage in line of battle. I'm like, wow, that's not much at all. When he says previous games, I think he's talking TSS. I don't know of anything else that that really makes and maybe it's Descendants, maybe Three Dog does it too. But I don't know of anything else that makes the Cav like that potent, where you're just like racking up casualties from it. It's very clear that something was really wrong with the factors that went into the TSS game. And I remember the later stuff also seeming to generate a little too much damage. Pretty maps though, pretty counters. The coloring, the understandability, like just the combination of appearance and, which I prefer to this actually, those muted tones, but also usability, which just like this game, of course you had Simonson on that one. This one, everything's designed by Barber, and I've always found Barber maps to be confusing, and now we see that the same kind of clutter and confusion goes into his rules too. It's a little after dark, and I've started moving some of the operational movement actions. One of the exciting things is, look at how far Sickles was able to make it. I don't think he had a special role or anything either. That's just using operational movement on a pike. If we look, the pike allows me 1/3 movement in that situation. So he was able to slide way up. I put myself here, started shifting the artillery over here, although I'm attaching 1 battalion of artillery to Sickles' other division. It's now in charge of it, right? I don't have to keep the reserve together. I have a commander who can move the reserve on his own if he wishes, but at this point it makes more sense to start allocating that artillery to other units. Came up though with a kind of weird situation, which is Anderson got to move during operational movement. His shit was in there, and he was right here. Now the problem I have, he got a huge movement roll. He got the 1.5 times movement. The problem that I have results again from the coordination between the 2 maps. He would have been able to shoot way up, whatever, And there's nothing on the operational maps to stop me. Well, obviously this is going to stop me, but also the clutter on the road. So I said he couldn't go any further than 7 Stars Post Office, I guess is what it is. I don't know, it says PO. I'm assuming that's what it is. But yeah. And so I stopped him in that hex. That's a hex that Pender is occupying in part, but I could reach the halfway point in it, so I said, hey, that seems like a fair option. As I finish up my operational movement, I notice I have a bogey on the map here. This force here. Now, it's pretty obvious that Greg and Kilpatrick are Cav. They're able to call out their Cav distance searches, but those only go 3 hexes. This must be some remnant of one of these 2 forces. I don't know how that could happen, honestly. Like, it might be, I don't know, like Stuart covered a force for a while is kind of the issue, so it wasn't clear that this began or ended. I don't know that that exists. Like, I don't know that that doesn't exist. I have reports from there, and so that's kind of a cool thing that can happen in the game. I guess we do the recover cohesion and degradation and weather and whatnot, but we also have to kind of worry about, first of all, not everything's recovering cohesion anymore. The only thing that really matters for is Buford's not going to get his back and the Confederates aren't going to get theirs. Not that they were. Oh, another victory point for Pickett. He's still stuck there until Imboden makes it up. But yeah, and then the other thing I have to worry about is units on the map, units on the operational map that I want to deploy. Which, if any Union units recover fully, I'm going to deploy them because they can move a little bit before nightfall. Probably don't want to be. There's nothing really against it in this game, as far as I recall. Like, there's nothing about pressing troops. You know, the activity that the troops took to get to the field fatigued them. But as far as I can tell, they can fight all day and all night, as long as they're not overly exerting. And maybe you can argue that they overly exerted, you know, in terms of like picking their chits and moving at double time or something like that. You know, not resting as much. But yeah, there's nothing that really prevents units from continuing to move. And the other thing is, if they continue to move on the operational map, they end up beyond the AM or PM, their choice. They end up picking up a lot of fatigue for that. I think the reason for that has to do with the distortion of the map. So like the idea that you'd be picking up that fatigue on this map is actually a little weird, but it is what it is. And I think it's an argument for deploy your shit on the map, man. Get to this point, I start making some choices here. So poor Caldwell has just a 1 divisional morale factor. I don't know why he has a lot of boxes, but can't cross them off very quickly. I don't know what that's meant to represent in terms of troops and whatnot. We'll see when the counters start playing out, if I recall back then. But he's gotten way behind Gibbon and Hayes, but he's also the only one who's on the map. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start segmenting out units in there for, here are the ones that I want to put on the map, and then, and more importantly, spend a command point to pull them out of R&R and put them into the cup or whatever for regular movement. But in this case, Caldwell's still on R&R, and these guys, it doesn't make a difference whether they're R&R or not. They're off map. I don't have an option to move them without costing them a great deal. So they're going to end up spending the night off the tactical map. But for another option, well, 3rd Corps is already down. 5th Corps has some units on the map. I could conceivably bring them in, and I may. They're going to be trailing off map, but at least some of their units are stepping on. So, but they're not one of the units that was recovering. 6th Corps was recovering. They're not on map yet. 11th Corps, not yet on map. I mean, they're close. Like, one unit is partway in, but it's going the wrong way, and I can't expend movement without fatiguing them. They're also not recovered yet. 12th Corps, almost recovered. Let's take a look. Geary, 2nd Division. He's close to the map. Again, I'm not going to give him that. So 12th Corps isn't doing anything special. This is optional units. So yeah, we're not gonna see a lot. I guess that 5th Corps unit is the only one that's going to deploy on their side. For the Confederate side, I'm going to bring Stuart on. You feel like he's too close to enemy units for me not to be moving him around properly on the map. He's not actually within 2 hexes of anything, but there's these, like, you know, 3rd Corps is not on this map. Well, is not represented on here. There's a lot of bogeys on here. They're actually stuff from there, and I have to start clearing that up as well. Wow. Yeah, all those Union units that moved forward, we can take a look. This one's gone. This one's gone. This one's gone. Which means I can start replacing my Victory Games Civil War flags, because the battle's going to happen at Gettysburg. You know, it just feels like we went through a lot of work to get something that's perhaps not even historically possible in terms of the operational game, and certainly didn't feel like it gave us a lot of additional options. And on top of that, added a whole pile of victory points to the Confederates that they wouldn't have in the tactical game, even though they spent that time there. There's no kind of, the Confederates should enter the game with 200 victory points. No. There's nothing to make up for it. The Confederates just get a huge victory point bonus in the operational game in a way that they do not get in the tactical game, and there's just no words for it. You know? I feel like the motivations, the fact that the two systems don't really line up, this is all the problem with this system. And it really feels like the operational game was not really fully worked out. And that, you know, compromises like, well, how do we prevent the Confederates from just grabbing all the territory? We've got a good reason for the Union not to. We've got a good reason for the Confederates not to. What they should have is a victory point penalty that they have to overcome or something to even things out. And again, I'm just going to probably ignore the victory points that they've collected over there. I just don't think that they make a damn bit of sense. But I let them motivate me until such a point as the Confederates felt like, wow, we're actually being threatened by this ridiculously fast Union advance on Gettysburg. On the other hand, maybe I'll slosh them some of those points, maybe 10% of them or something like that, if it's a close battle, to just say, look, you know, they should get something. Because otherwise they could have just occupied the map. Much easier. You know, the Union didn't have rules preventing them from it. Neither side has rules preventing them from it. But the Union, the rules that were intended to prevent them from occupying the map didn't really work. Part of it's my fault, but I think the majority of it is actually just the way the system, you know, the way the op game is designed just doesn't work for that. But Ayres is a unit from the 5th Division on the map. He actually starts at 4520. He would have one unit, one counter on the map at most. The rest would trail out. It's going to get in my way of everything. You know what? We're going to penalize him. Because again, we're here too early. right? So that's this hex. It's spread out this way. But yeah, let him move on tomorrow morning. It's kind of funny. I mean, you know, if this hadn't been a half hex, I probably would have allowed it. But the fact that it's a half mega hex, I'm just like, you know, and you're screened by Union forces, and it's not clear that there's a major engagement going on. There's some firefighting and everything, and it's getting late in the day. Screw it, man. I discovered something I absolutely intended to do, and it's hard to do because of the conjunction between the dual maps, which is Reynolds was supposed to move. Now, I could have moved him in conjunction with one of the 11th Corps units not doing anything when I pulled it. I could have moved him with 1st Corps there. I actually saved him points so he could go do things. So I am definitely going to move him. He may move up to 3 spaces. He wouldn't have been able to wake either of these guys up. That has to happen during the command phase. By the way, Reynolds made it, and I've got Anderson coming on. That's all of 3rd Corps is on the map already. I haven't finished with that task. Had to get more coffee, refill my pipe. And while I was down there, or on my way down, I thought a little bit about Stuart and this wagon back here. And my initial thought was, well, maybe it makes sense that, you know, there's victory points. So the victory points that are generated by just sitting on the map that I complained about, maybe it makes more sense because there's victory points for this wagon as well, for that part, rather than for the sitting on the map. But honestly, it's the same damn thing. In the historical situation, Stuart got the wagons through. We can, and you know, that's 20 victory points you don't get as the Confederates on the tactical game. No matter what. You don't have to protect this wagon or anything like that. Stuart shows up on day 3 with them. Now, then I consider, what is the existence of Stuart on the map going to mean for me at such an early time, right? You would think Lee was especially upset about losing the capacity of Stuart, and I can't think of a hell of a lot of use for him during the battle. There's not really any scouting in this game, right? Any forces that move, once the trigger line's broken, they're seen. You may not know exactly what they are, but they're seen. They're seen as well as the Cav can see them. Is there some kind of weird outflanking that's going to happen or something? No. So I'm really kind of left with, I don't know what Stuart's going to add to the battlefield itself. Like, what if he had showed up on day 1 in the historical battle? Could he have done something? I don't know. But then, I think even further, of what great use is the Cav on the operational map? And again, I'm left with not a whole shitload. So the whole question of like, oh, is it so terrible that Stuart's out there bringing these wagons? I mean, it's an annoyance. There's mechanisms to handle it. But the game, which goes to such lengths to deal with Stuart, doesn't deal with, and obviously this would require, you know, some kind of core changes to the game. It doesn't really deal with the fact that Lee was left without eyes in the battle. Is it too late by the time of whatever, June 30th? By the way, we're actually, the game, no, reality has caught up with the game, but the game's going to go well past the 3rd. No question there. But anyway, unless I quit. Which so far doesn't seem to be the case. It's an annoying system. It's cumbersome. It's painful. But man, it's Gettysburg. I get to fight Gettysburg every few years at best. But yeah, I just feel like they go through all this effort to deal with, where's Stuart? What's up with him? And it's really kind of pointless. It doesn't make that much difference. I mean, the importance of Stuart isn't the fact, and it's all that I seem to see in the game, that he has some combat potential with his cav. It just doesn't hold up, man. It doesn't. In fact, cav is rightly not very good at combat. Even if they have decent ratings, they're not very good at attacking. Like, the assumption is that they dismount and they fight as infantry, so they're basically dragoons. Alright, back to the task at hand. Whatever the hell it is. I may be lost already in terms of where I am. I did the cohesion. I think I did the adjust morale. Did the degradation. I haven't done weather yet. I'm working on getting guys on the map. Okay. I'm just trying to remember what I do. I gotta bring up another Q-tip. Oh no, that's been fine now. Oh, going into the 5 p.m. turn then. And there is Stuart in all his glory with the wagon behind him. Coming up behind the Union forces. And it's kind of cool that they're there, because now I feel like I can react with sickles, try to defend against that, and, you know, actually deploy instead of trying to work between 2 different maps at the same time. Okay. For the operational situation, look, the Confederates are aware that the Union is in these places. They're not aware of the huge force that's down here, but they know they're coming up against the Army of the Potomac. I mean, there's enough on the map already that they can tell. And for the Union point of view, Confederate forces coming through here, if I know the rules and the scenario that's set up, I know that there's more forces around Chambersburg. Not much. I think just pickets there now. Well, there's more curving up this road too. And some crap over here. The fact that, like, the inset doesn't really reflect, like, I'm allowed to move around on the inset within the operational map, and there can be stuff on the operational map at the same time. That's causing a lot of difficulty for me mentally, just in terms, and that's part of why I want to deploy stuff as soon as I can. Honestly, I would kind of like to deploy Caldwell, but he's going to go into encampment, and I may get some advantage out of holding him off map for that. And I mean, he's going to be down in this area, so it's not really that big a deal. You know, he's not in the area where fighting can happen. But you know what? Stuart could come down. Backing Stuart up here, I got Jenkins, who may take control of the wagons and try to follow them and try to protect them, so that I can use Stuart for some kind of combat operation. I don't know what. Mainly, he's just on the map earlier than Second Corps is. All right, I guess it's time for me to take a break. Part of the problem is I don't want to play Raid. I kind of have to. I'm in a CVC or whatever. I mean, I could just stop. But there's advantages to me playing a lot more right now over the next couple days. And the truth of the matter is, I just don't have the will to do it. It's no fun. Fair, though. I don't know that I like fun all that much. I mean, look, I'm having my enjoyment playing this. I feel a sense of accomplishment or whatever when I play a game, to some extent. But, and I don't feel that when I'm playing on the computer, right? Or just watching videos or whatever. I feel like I'm just wasting my life away. But this also is exhausting. Pretty much anything that I can enjoy in life or feel accomplished about is exhausting. Work wasn't terribly so. That was kind of like playing raid is in a lot of ways. You know, I mean, every now and then I have to think and figure stuff out. Same thing in raid. I have to calculate shit out and everything. But for the most part, you know, I can kind of do it on autopilot. An AI could have done it for me. For the most part, every now and then an AI is going to just flub something completely. Either miss something because it's new to it, or more likely see a problem where there's not really one. And like miss the mitigating factors, you know. Actually, I don't know which is more likely, but yeah. What we found, like we were using a neural network to evaluate automated findings that we had. And it didn't miss a lot of things that could be found through automation. But the problem, of course, is there are things that just can't be found through automation. And whatever would be happening, it would be much, much harder to have an AI do the full tasks that I was performing. Some of them were just, you couldn't define them and put an automation filter in front of them and say, look for this, and if you see this, you've got to worry. It was more of a, it would have to be a very, very general AI that just looks at everything and just says, ooh, Spidey sense is tingling on this and I got no idea why. Because that's kind of how it works. But yeah, the only thing that I find relaxing, and that I find incredibly relaxing, is just reading that I enjoy. Unfortunately, now I'm reading some Tolstoy, and I can't come to my mind if I really like it or not. It's some short stories, and I don't know, the one I'm reading feels like, you know, it could be one of the romance novels from his era. Except written by a male. Both sides spent a point on initiative, otherwise taking care of things. So, like, Reynolds got Doubleday under orders. Doubleday got Robinson aware again, you know. But outside of sort of the general stuff that just happens, right? A lot of things in the march orders for both sides, although the Union, the mass of their forces is in the cup simply because they're not doing anything, and they're under R&R. They can't do that. Robinson's out of R&R now. Sickles is entirely out at this point. Doubleday's division is still back here waiting to slip onto the Gettysburg map and surprise the hell out of everybody from where he shows up, as usual. But 11th Corps is going to come in from that side, too, which it's just the way the road network worked, and, you know, how I moved pieces. It kind of made sense. But I got one really bad piece of news for the Union, which is that Buford failed to get any activations. Now, he's an independent command, which means he can't go, he wouldn't have anyway, because he got a 7. Oh, wait, he's not at -1, he's at +1. Ooh, wait a minute, he's got a point. I can put him under direct command then. Okay. I had wanted to do a double move, but basically what I want to do is fall Buford back here and bring Robinson up and create a defensive line here along this Whistler's Ridge. Let the Confederates try to batter through that. Obviously, whenever you're on the defense is when you're likely to lose terrain, which means most, not everything, But much of your possible morale loss is through losing terrain rather than like casualties to units. Casualties to units haven't happened much yet. We've got cohesion hits on these guys on both sides, but nobody's flipped over. Once they start flipping and stuff like that happens, yeah, it starts getting uglier. So yeah, I thought he was in trouble. Like I think I said, I've got raid playing itself. I got to go down and deal with it. But I wanted to come up and do a little bit of this, just the command phase, the administrative phase, then get to the turn. I don't think this is going to be as bloody a turn as last one. For example, Heath is in the cup. Pender is under direct command. I'm just withholding them for their activities. And those are the only two things that I've got. So I'm going to be able to potentially burn commands for First Corps or whatever. If there's less activity that you're doing on your side, it means that the enemy may be at certain disadvantages. There is an interesting factor in this, which is that the Union always has more shit that they have to deal with. So if they're throwing all their pieces in the cup, or not, it kind of doesn't matter. Anyway, Union managed to get the initiative on this one, and I guess we're ready to go. The day is beginning to wind down. I don't expect a hell of a lot of fighting here. I didn't want to push Heath too hard. Oh, on the Confederate side, the plan is for Pender. Pender, I think, is going to hold position, and I'm going to try to bring Anderson this way. Unlike the columns on the operational map, I can move things kind of freely. I don't have to spend a whole turn switching the order or anything like that. So the fact that I passed a crossroads isn't as terrible a thing as it would be doing so on the operational map. I didn't have really a choice. You have to start in the middle hex. Okay, I had to check. Pretty sure I had a point on each guy, and I think the Union got their initiative. I've had like 2 hours of sleep. It's late morning on I guess it's Wednesday because my garbage is down there. And this is the last day before a real heat wave hits. It's going to start hitting over 100 soon, which may mean I can't come up here during the day. Well, during the late afternoon, early evening when I'm often up here. Anyway, first action then is the Union. I don't know what I'm doing. Buford is what I was doing, and I pulled him back along the road, positioning up here. Movement in this is very complicated compared to, and some of it is the amount of terrain that there is present on the map. It looks busy. It kind of is. There are a fair amount of different types of terrain that you have to distinguish and whatnot. But a lot of it has to do with, hey, I've got to keep, Devlin together here. I've got to keep Gamble together. This is actually probably too far apart. I don't know. But it really just, and at the same time, because of the impulse nature of it, I don't mind impulses in games with very few pieces, but there's a lot of units moving around. The impulse nature of it, I've got to worry about Robinson coming up, and I was planning on deploying him onto here, but I've got to worry about the possibility of a gap being exploited and all that. So I can't really afford to do that, do what I wanted to. Now, these things are somewhat realistic, but I often find myself objecting to movement rules in things like, the Battles of the Age of Reason, which are nowhere near where I'm looking at, and the Napoleonic Labatt series. as opposed to Viva l'Empereur, which also, you know, it's kind of annoying that two systems use the word la bataille in so many of their games. But anyway, these games worry a hell of a lot about the intricacies of, you know, formation changes, different terrain types affect on the formation as they're moving through it, all kind of facing differentials and everything. This doesn't have any of that, but it has the same kind of feel of complexity to the movement itself, which I do feel is painful to cope with. Anyway, that was the initial impulse. I'm tired, I want to talk more. So I come back. So what I don't like about these kind of systems that require me to work too hard for the movement is it just makes me not want to engage and fight, right? It's a war game. I should be able to watch the military situation evolving. I should be seeing fighting happening and everything. But what it really ends up doing is a huge disincentive to wanting to actually do the things that one needs to do in the game. I end up wanting to just, you know, form up on a line and face each other and rest. Which, to be honest, if I was in command of a bunch of troops, I probably would very much have that feeling. I probably would not want to try to coordinate an attack or anything like that. So maybe it's fair in that sense. But on the other, Stuart really ought to be with his troops. To whatever extent that that's going on, you know, I just don't really know how I feel about it. By the way, Stuart has like Hampton with him. I feel like Hampton could be broken out as an independent division if I really wanted to. If I had some reason for it. I don't know that I do, but it would give me another commander on the map if I wanted that. I do feel like some kind of rules need to be in play for creating independent orders. I don't know what they're going to be involved in. I'm sure it's going to involve spending some command points or something. It's not actually in the rules, though, if I recall correctly. Yeah, I don't see anything about creating independent units. There's stuff about there's stuff in the rules about previously independent units rejoining their command. I pulled a few chits that didn't do anything for the Union. Confederates, Heath gets to move. He moves up into the hills here. He got actually time and a half move, which is great. But what I'm trying to express with the movement thing, here's one example of what has to be done. And it's not that different from the games I'm used to that are more tactical in nature, but because artillery is treated in a lot of ways kind of similarly to the other units, not entirely. It has its firepower effect, but it's kind of a weird effect compared to, you know, if you're looking at TSS or CWB. What you kind of have to do is you have to pick off the units. Basically, you have to work brigade by brigade to make sure that your brigades are going to get together. You got to kind of figure out timing so you don't have to move through units, because that can cause issues. So if somebody's ahead on the road, they go first. It's all stuff that realistically would be happening, but it clutters up your mind as you're trying to perform any kind of action. So, you know, it took me about 5 minutes to move a division. That's not pleasant. Maybe I'll get more used to it like I did with the operational map. But again, it's just not optimal. Right? Like, I'm used to the, hey, I can move, you know, TSS is at a regimental side. I can move a division in a minute or two. you know, guns and all. Here I have to unstack things. The guns have different movement allowances from, well, they have the same movement allowance, but they have different movement rates, which all makes perfect sense, but there's just so much terrain to worry about that you have to keep looking up, and so much differential and everything. And then the fact is that the guns are kind of part of, like, they're mixed in. They look like the other units. They just, you know, they have the third core symbol on them. The only differential they have is these little gun barrels as opposed to not. So the counters all kind of look the same, and you really kind of have to paw through them and figure out what you're doing. At some point, Heath should be resting. I don't really want to do it now. I want to gain what ground I can before evening falls. And I can't rest during the evening. Well, actually I can rest as the light gets dark. I can't rest during the actual nighttime period. But some stuff happens then. Again, some Union pulls that didn't matter. We got Anderson moving over here. I get Pender now. And I find something else to complain about. Yeah, I like complaining. Pender has Lane as one of the brigades, but it also has him in command of the artillery. So it's, you know, the same name on there, but with units with different symbols, and they're essentially different units. It's just, I don't know, it's annoying to me. Corps all got to move one after the other. I guess they were clumped together in the cup or something, I don't know. Wadsworth, no big deal. He's just shifting his position a little bit, getting into a slightly better place, but I'm worried about Anderson moving around my flank there. Over, yeah. He's got a lot of nasty terrain to move through, though. There's not any roads up there. But Robinson and Rowley, with Doubleday's division, both got their turns eaten by Confederate rolls. The Confederates are out of chits in the cup and commands and whatnot. So now they're burning Union turns. Both of them only got to move 2 hexes. But that led me to something, you know, over in the lighter colored terrain, I can see the hexes pretty easily. So one thing Barbara likes to do is not draw complete hex lines. The hex grid that he works off of, and maybe this is a Clash of Arms thing, I don't know, have these gaps in them. When you get into the darker colors, sometimes it's hard to distinguish where the hexes are. So I was actually like halfway into the next hex or something, because these hexes are actually the right size, unlike these guys where they're too small for the counters. These are about the right size for counters, but I got kind of confused along the road by that. Again, you know, there's just this sort of, I don't know, you know, like a concept of the graphic quality, the look of a Barber map, whatever, that gets in the way of actually playing the game. I've never really enjoyed playing on most Barber maps. I think he did the Great Campaigns maps as well, which don't bother me as much. They look, more than this does, kind of childishly drawn, you know. But actually, I don't know, this with its circles and stuff like that looks weird too, to me. I'm much happier with, say, Line of Battle, if you want to get all the contours right and everything. I've already said, though, you know, in terms of play quality, I really like TSS's map. And if you put aside how ugly they are, the CWB maps are really, really functional. And they're not ugly to me the way like GDW maps are, which it's funny, like you'd think TSS with its muted map is really, really, you know, would indicate that I like the muted colors and whatnot. Somehow GDW I don't know, maybe the white versus, like they make the clear hexes too white, and they just didn't understand that kind of real muting. They just went with simplicity on a lot of their maps. Anyway, I don't know. But it feels like it's all of a piece, you know. The color and the amount of details of terrain and whatnot feed into a difficulty in playing, along with all the different kinds of movement costs for all that specific terrain and everything. It all ends up hindering your ability to just play the game, right? Now, I could see people. It may just be that it's a matter that the things that I focus on that are important to me are very different from a lot of what this is dealing with. Even though if I think about it, you know, broadly, things like, hey, command and control are really important in this game. Obviously, terrain, getting it right is of some importance. You know, there's a lot of stuff that it feels like at some broad level I'm in total agreement. But when it's put together, it just doesn't. It doesn't feel like I'm playing something that works smoothly at all. Combine, you know, the kind of painful quality of actually moving the units on the tactical map and trying to do things with them with this interminable pulling chits out of the cup and rolling dice again and again and again and again and again for everything. None of it having any effect whatsoever. Now, I'm probably going to look back fondly on what I just complained about, which is I didn't get to do anything, but I had to do a lot of mechanical actions, to when I actually have to start fighting the battles out. I'm really weighing in my head. I mean, I'm going to keep giving this a try, but whether or not I'm going to make it through this sucker, because it is just very painful. I loves me some Gettysburg, and but it just feels like in so many ways it's focusing on the things that I'm not that interested in and leaving aside things that I'm interested in, which is a lot of the story and whatnot, right? So or the story I want to hear, you know, like I want to know what the firing effects are. Fire combat's not in this. It's all this. I'm so busy calculating out the DRMs and everything that I don't really get a good picture from that sort of mechanical aspect of running down the line, firing all my units. I also don't feel like I get a good strategic overview and manipulation the way I say would in a Napoleon at Waterloo based game. You've got some Civil War stuff that's based on that kind of system as well. The blue and the gray is kind of along those lines. So I don't really just get the ability to, you know, worry about manipulating my pieces. Those types of games grew on me later. But this, again, I feel like I'm spending so much effort on manipulating the movement, figuring out the modifiers on the combat and everything, that I'm being taken away from the action that I'm most interested in. I guess that's my real gripe when it comes down to it. All right, that's going to put us at the operational movement. I'm going to run down and set up RAID so that it plays by itself for a little bit longer. It had been doing so, but it was basically done. And swap batteries, and I'll be back up to try to finish up this turn before I go back to sleep. Not to mention why I'm up. So the last couple days, my neighbors had guys working on the roof, and the nail gun is so fucking loud. And then people walking around, you know, outside my window. It's a decent distance, right? But there's not much in the way. There's just some trees in the way, and it's a pretty loud situation. And for me, of course, you know, I'm usually asleep between 4 in the morning and noon. Well, call it 6 in the morning and noon, and the question is where the slop over is. You know, I can't blame them. They got to work, you know, during daylight hours and whatnot. I'm the weirdo here. Operational movement, rebels make the Union go first after having won an initiative, and now they're regretting it because Third Corps is turned up towards Stuart. I could have positioned Stuart somewhere else, and now he's kind of facing an infantry corps. Yeah, it's just one division so far, but yeah, a fair amount of the force is going to head that way, but the Union can't just let Stuart run rampant behind my lines and whatnot. So I've got to do something to stymie that advance. But the Confederates are definitely regretting what they did. I'm in a weird situation here. So Imboden moved up. Union's been forcing Confederates to burn their turns. Imboden moved up in a way that releases Pickett early. Okay, great. But when Pickett moves, I want to take this supply wagon with me. I don't see why I would not want the Army supply wagon where the main focus of my army is. Now, the whole thing is, Pickett was supposed to defend the wagon. There's no rules that say I can't move the wagon. There's an implication that Imboden shouldn't be allowed to do anything except defend the wagon and Chambersburg, but I don't really care. I'm going to drag the wagon on. I feel like I've created a weird enough situation anyway. I want to get that wagon to Cashtown. And I don't mind if Imboden defends Cashtown or whatever. Right now, I feel like the weight of the army is moving this way. I sure the hell don't want the wagon here. There's a threat down there. Kind of weird interactions. First of all, Stuart running up north, trying to get out of the way of Sickles there and protect his wagon. Now, I have Jenkins behind me, and this is where things got weird. So Jenkins was actually strung out back here, but Kilpatrick, well, first Gregg moved up, kind of threatening. Kilpatrick then went up, made that bogey go away, and cut across, scared Jenkins away. They're both deployed for battle, actually, at this point. The retreat from battle by Jenkins, because he's too small to face much of anything, ate up his turn. But he's in a position, and maybe I shouldn't have been, giving the Union turns again. The position he's in is basically trying to cover Stuart's rear. Now, for how I'm looking at the way things are, the Confederates have to make a way that they can get a line back south in order to keep their army in supply and whatnot. That's been one of my major decisions as to why we're gathering on the field at this point. And because the center is at Gettysburg, and really my army was divided into two segments, it does make sense that I would show up at Gettysburg, given the starting positions. Given that, it doesn't make a lot of sense for Imboden to stay here, especially since the wagon is swerving its way around. There should probably be another Confederate marker up there. To cover what's going on down here, Pickett should probably be on the board. It's not that big a deal. I'm not really worried about capturing all of the little rumors that are out there. But I feel like the Confederates don't really have to defend these channels particularly. They have nothing up north. Like, it's not like they're trying to trace supply up north where they are. Now, it might make sense to try to trace a line to the west, and therefore Imboden might make some sense there. It probably doesn't make any sense to trace a line east. So Jenkins moving away makes perfect sense. But Chambersburg, it might be worth kicking around somewhere near Chambersburg to see what's going on. On the other hand, for the Union, I think it's very important to keep some sort of tripwire, and I left Merritt here to search with him. He didn't actually move. Huey is moving up into this direction. To keep something in line to make sure that the Confederates don't shift their army to either east or west. But once everything's kind of accounted for, maybe I don't have to worry about that as much. You know, so for example, if Imboden moves off here, I feel like Merritt can move off there. With Jenkins being chased off, I'm not sure that there's any threat to the east, and I'm also not all that worried. But that's where my supplies are, right? Like, I'm not reasonably able to trace this way. Of course, the way the roads are built, there's nothing going off the map or anything like that. There is here and here, something down at Frederick. But I don't feel like I have to dominate on the operational map terribly well. Although, honestly, I probably should. But I don't really believe that there would be no path south between Frederick and Reisterstown. It just doesn't seem reasonable to me. Maybe the Potomac and everything makes that ugly. I don't know. But I'm concentrating on getting control of the Gettysburg roads, even though they don't actually lead anywhere on the operational map, which is a little troublesome. But again, you know, what am I going to do? I'm just looking at a north-south and not really worrying about what's going on down here, because I think that's not being fully representative, and I'm kind of making up victory conditions, based on this, so that something happens on the Gettysburg map, because the way the game's designed, it doesn't necessarily require that in the operational game. I think we're about done. I've got a couple more things to still do. Caldwell has to recover his one box that he's allowed to turn, which is why he's not on the map, among other things. Yeah, I'll swap batteries again. I'm really tired, and I think I'll try to load this up because it kind of makes sense to me. It's a little weird because this is the last daytime turn, but I think we've seen the combat we're going to see today. It doesn't feel to me like Heath wants to push on further. It doesn't feel to me like Pender and Anderson are going to do much more than just maneuver a little bit. And that's going to go into, you know, at least the evening, if not the night. Damn battery. So I think it's not completely unreasonable. I'm not sure. I get the feeling the next video is going to be short, but short doesn't mean like shorter than the recent ones, but short doesn't mean short, right? Weather stayed the same, and yeah, let's load this up, because again, I feel like I've done a lot on this video with the first combats and stuff like that. So I think it's worth taking a pause here. Plus, I'm so tired.